Hey guys, it's Sam, and this is my spoiler-free review of Ariadne by Jennifer Saint. This book was my Bibliothecary book pick for the month, so every month my Bibliothecary supporters get to vote in a poll for a book that I'll read and review, and this one for February actually, but I had to wait for the audiobook to come in because I wanted to listen to the audiobook, so I just finished it. But if you want to participate in polls for books that I'll read, a bunch of other stuff, I've talked about the Bibliothecary a lot before, I will link that on the screen. So this is a standalone adult novel that retells the myth of Ariadne while fleshing out the story. This also follows the perspective of her sister Phaedra, who has her own part in myth as well. This is very similar in tone to Circe by Madeline Miller, which I know is very popular as well for a mythology retelling. And that's why I wanted to read this, because I love Circe. I wasn't truly comparing them, but it's kind of hard not to, so I will be mentioning Circe here and there throughout this review as well. No spoilers for either book, but just references if you are also considering reading this based on liking Madeline Miller's work. So first off, I'll talk about the world building. This, in its world building and plot and sort of writing style, is very much in line with the writing of like the myths. So this is very similar to how Madeline Miller writes, in that it's taking a myth and then fleshing it out into a retelling, but also still using the world building and just like the mythology prose to do that world building. I don't think you necessarily need to do a ton of world building in a Greek mythology retelling. Because Greek mythology is so pervasive in a lot of our society, there's not a ton of world building that needs to be done, but this did a good job of kind of explaining who some of the key players were and kind of telling stories within stories to explain some of the context of like other Greek heroes and things that are mentioned throughout the story. Next, we talk about our characters, and I think this is where we'll either hit or miss for people. I found this to be a little bit too distant with our characters. I don't necessarily feel any feelings for Ariadne or Phaedra, and I think that is to the book's detriment. I think what was so good for a lot of people about particularly Circe, which I know not everyone loves, but I really loved, is that I felt like deeply connected to Circe and her story, and here I didn't really feel that connection. I didn't really feel a personality for either of them. It was still them going through their lives, and more so the themes of the story are about how the gods in particular impact humans and impact women, and it was more about those themes than it was necessarily about the characters, and I was hoping for like a deeper character exploration. I think it tries to do that, but it just didn't really resonate for me. Lastly, let me talk about the plot. Like I mentioned, it's a fleshing out of an existing myth, and I will say that this doesn't really stray from the myth at all. So if you're familiar with the myths, it's gonna follow the myths, similar to how like the Song of Achilles did. Like, you knew how that was gonna end. This is a very similar vibe. I do kind of wish it would have changed things a little bit. It definitely alludes to, for example, the Medusa myth and how there are kind of like different interpretations of that. I think this could have been interpreted differently, or there were a couple of plot points that there are different versions of this myth, and I think there are different plot points that could have been tweaked a little bit, and I might have liked it a little bit more. Ultimately, is that more my problem because the way that Greek myths portray women in particular is not super nice or cathartic or any of that. I'm not owed that by the story, but is that part of what maybe didn't resonate with me? Sure. But I will say, because we are sort of speeding towards an end that you know is gonna go a certain way. If you're familiar with the myth, if you're not, cool, go into it, you know, not knowing anything, and maybe you won't have that same feeling. But because we have that, and then there wasn't a ton of fleshing out of the story in a way that made me feel like I was, I don't know, getting something new, this didn't really resonate a ton with me. I did like the audiobook. I listened to this on audiobook, and I tend to like retellings like this in audiobook form because of that oral history, mythology kind of situation. I think that's best done in audiobook, so I would recommend that. Overall, this wasn't bad. I didn't hate it. It just didn't resonate with me. It was a solid, just like 3 stars. The writing was good. The like themes that it explored, I think, were good, but it felt a little bit too simple. I would have liked a little bit more complexity to this. So like 2.5 to 3 stars. I don't know if I'll read any more Jennifer Saint. I know she's coming out with other Greek retellings kind of going along, again, like the Madeline Miller route. She has an Electra book coming out. I don't know if I'll read that or not. Kind of on the fence with that. But comment below, let me know what you thought of this book. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see all of you guys soon. Bye.